especially here. You can hear everything that's happening there. Everything is there. But I want is singing. And for me, that's the most important thing. I work with some musicians who just like percussionists. I'm fascinated with percussion and drums because there's a lot of discipline in what they do. They are like athletes. I've worked with a percussionist called Ciro Batista recently, who's from Brazil. And just when he goes with a cabaça or a you've got 35 years of experience just going. So I believe that when I work with students like with you, I know some of you are musicians, I'm sure about that. But what I want to hear is sincerity. It's how much can you take it down to zero, what you do. It's kind of like you have to deconstruct what you do every day. You talk to Herbie Hancock, you talk to John McLaughlin, Pat Metheny, I'm sure they would say the same thing. I don't know what they'd say, but it's only logic that you have to, it's like you're a machine. If you're a vocalist, it's the same thing. The vocals is one of the most difficult instruments to play because you're affected by the weather and by your condition and your health. But it's really, really important, like to use an analogy like a car in a race, a Formula 1 race. Every time they start that race, they take the car apart completely and then they build it to do the race. And that's what you have to do. And so I think it's important to think about playing slowly and just stop everything that you know for a second. And sometimes go into places that you don't know. Like if, let me think, some of you might be into jazz, okay? You're doing a jazz course, all right, that's good. Why don't you study Latin American music, just for 1 week? Or why don't you study heavy metal for 1 week? And see the discipline that there is in heavy metal, which is incredible. You only have to listen to a band like Meshuggah, or to know what I'm talking about. These guys are incredible musicians. Very, very disciplined. There's a lot of polyrhythm going on with the drums. There's a very technical stuff, detuning and recording techniques. So if you're a jazz musician and you spend 1 week studying Meshuggah, you can come back to your jazz with some knowledge from somewhere else and bring that into your jazz. Same with metal people going to study bossa nova. Because bossa nova, all these kind of very complex rhythms. I mean, it's like if you break it down, if you imagine playing that with a heavy rock sound, that would be very interesting, I think. I think it would. I've never tried it, but I imagine it would. Same with country music. I don't really like country, but I think it's interesting the way that the kind of style is very, very interesting for a guitarist. So I can bring that style and put it with what I do. So me, I don't really think I have a style, but it's other people tell me I do. And so that I'm happy with that. But the only reason that I do this is because I play a lot of different music. So now I'll play you something. When I was 19 years old, I went to Sao Paulo to study with Sebastião Tapajós. He's a well-known classical, traditional Brazilian musician, guitarist. He didn't know I was coming. I just went there with $150 and my father gave me, and I went, that must have been crazy. I had no plan, I had nowhere to stay. But I found this guy, And he's let me work with him for 2 weeks. And he showed me a very interesting piece which shows a lot of styles. It has rhythm, it has melody. It's not really bossa nova, it's more like a crossover bossa nova and classical. So it's by working with someone like him that it was very inspiring for me. So they always stayed with me. They always stayed with me. I spent a long time working with different bands. I played in a funk band in America for a while. I played in rock bands and everything. But when I was about 29 years old, everything came to one place, and I was fortunate to meet Sting. And everything that I'd worked for all these years finally made sense, because I was working with a musician who had the same problem as me, which was he was not into my style. He was always changing things. So really, it was a great. Then things just opened up for me. I became even more sure that playing different music is important. Because that's really my message. That's the number one message to you. Frankly, like, why do you care what I say? But I'm here and you asked me to come. And really my message is you've got to be a student all the time of jazz if you want to be stronger. If you want to get stronger as a musician, you've got to listen, keep your ears open all the time. And also advice, what people say. And it's through doing all these different styles that I managed to write my own music, which is kind of a combination of classical, a bit of rock, a bit of everything. I mean, I've got a tune that I wrote with Sting. Things like that is just a combination of everything I've listened to. And the song that I wrote with Sting, which is quite well known, Shape of My Heart, is it's the same thing. I was just experimenting with Chopin chords, because Chopin has a distinctive style on the piano. I'm not going to say that I studied Chopin, but I like the sound of the piano and those chords, those 6 chords. Like minor 6. These kind of chords, it's very Chopin. And really, I was just experimenting. So it's just a sharper, you know, like major, minor 6. And then all you do is you put the Latin American rhythms first. So really, that's all it is. So I can't say that that's original. It's not original. But it's made me a lot of money. I'll take it. That's fine, you know, I'll accept it. But the thing is that nothing is really original. So you shouldn't try and be original. I don't think it's necessary. All you do is you're a filter. How do you say, you know what I mean? You're a filter of everything that you listen to. And that's your job. You don't have to try and do something incredible. It's not going to happen. So just keep your ears and your skin, and your heart open to different influences all the time, not just music, with art, literature, because your job is to translate all these feelings into something that people like, and something that helps people, you know, because music is a healing power. It's very powerful stuff, music, and it's not just to impress other musicians. I don't play guitar for other musicians, I play guitar for myself, and for people who love music. I'm not Joe Satriani, I'm not Steve Vai. I love what they do. I wish I could do that, but I don't do it. I don't want it. That's not what I'm hearing. I think I'm very, very lucky.
You need some water, Dominic, sorry.
No. I'm very lucky because I get to express myself as a musician. But it is my duty, my job, to take it seriously. It's my duty, obligation, to take what I do very, very seriously. But also, it's my obligation not to take myself seriously. You should never take yourself seriously. That's when you have problems. And I've seen that with a lot of musicians, a lot of guitarists. And yes, there was a time in my career that maybe when I was becoming successful that I thought maybe I'm hot shit and like, this is really important. But it's not important. I feel the same now as I did when I was in your position, when I was learning. And I'm still learning. I'm in the same journey you are on. So it's a fantastic journey. The great thing is that it's a beautiful journey. The good news is that it's great fun, and I see the world, and I see a lot of great people. The bad news is that you never get there. So are you prepared to take a one-way ticket to a destination that you don't know? That's how crazy you have to be. You know, it's no good having a return ticket, because then you're not serious. You have to put your everything on the table. Just go, I'm going. And it's very difficult. I'm on my second marriage. So I've made a lot of mistakes, but I can tell you how not to make mistakes as well. And now I see balance with life and things is important. And I just wanted to say one more thing about the business of music. It's really important. The only reason I'm here today and I'm successful as a guitarist is because I took opportunities that were in front of me. I wasn't in a position to say, no, I don't want to do that. Because you don't know if someone calls you and says, can you play on this gig or this, you can't say no. Because it's a sacred thing, music. If somebody's offering you an opportunity, you take it. Because you could offer them an opportunity and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who you're going to meet. What if somebody you meet there 10 years later remembers you and says, oh, that guy came and did this thing, now I'm very successful, I'm going to give him a job. That's exactly how it worked for me. There's no other way. And so I'm very, very lucky position to be a professional musician, earning a living playing music. That is the dream. I've got 6 children, you know. So I'm still working. But isn't it great to be able to do something like this and to enjoy it and to endure it? It's difficult. It's a struggle. Sometimes I don't like it. So that's my story. Has anyone got any questions?
I'd like to know, sometimes when you study different style, it can happen that you lose your identity, or you start to think, what I really am, I'm that kind, what I really want to be, where is my real road, my style. What do you suggest to learn to know what is the real our road?
Well, that's a kind of loaded question. I think when you study a different style, yes, you can lose your identity, but like I said before, you shouldn't worry about your identity because you're not important. You're a musician. You have a job, like a doctor does, to fix things, or a mechanic. So you have to detach yourself from your identity. It's like, I don't really care about my identity anymore. I've lost it a long time ago. Now other people tell me about my identity, which is interesting for me, and I have little blogs and people sometimes buy my music. That's great, but I wouldn't worry about that. I think it's really important just to do the tour, be a tourist. Because it's all there for you. You travel to India, you don't have to travel to South America. You don't need to do that. You just need to, now we live in a world of communication where everything is possible on the internet, on record shops, on iTunes. You can do that. Literature, reading, good teaching. You can teach yourself how to teach yourself. And really, I wouldn't worry about that. I think it's good that you lose your identity sometimes. So that's not a problem. Anyone else?
Do you learn these songs, these classical songs, from sheep, from your days?
Well, this one I wrote. Sometimes I use music, it's important, it's just a language for me. I'm not very good at reading music, but it's a language, so we have to learn it. I read music the same way that I read an Italian menu. Not very well, I can kind of understand it, like fettuccine with, I think I know what that means, but not really. Yeah, it's important to read a bit. It's very difficult to read from guitar because there's so many different places where you can play the same note. So that's my excuse. But yeah, I think it's what it is that I've learned just from looking at the music. But I can use my ear. It's very important to do ear training, to learn by ear. I think it's very important. I've learned a lot of pieces that way, but sometimes as an exercise, like the Antonio Laudo pieces, that's from music. That's like from reading music, because sometimes it's good to do that. And what I like, and with Bach, I do it all the time, but I like the violin music. I choose the partitas and sonatas for violin, which I think is the Bible of music. If you play the bass, if you play the piano, the cello, the flute, because a lot of it is single line, and it's the interesting challenge for me is what is the fingering. So I can spend months just on one piece of music, like this piece. I have to figure it out. So it took me 3 days just to work. Just that. So that is my mission. A lot of the time I'm on tour. I spend a long time on tour and I'm in my hotel room. And I just have the music in front of me. I have everything I need. Because on tour I have a lot of time. I'm not out seeing the cathedral or the I've done that. I buy the postcard of the cathedral to send to my mother in the hotel. But really, I'm doing Bach. It's the only thing I do when I practice. You can do something else, but Bach is the solution, I think.
So, how and why did you choose to play the guitar?
Good question. I was born in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and I lived there until I was 11 years old. In Buenos Aires, or in the country in Argentina, everybody plays guitar. So, and everybody plays Brazilian music and South American music. So it was natural. My sister taught me how to play the guitar. She was really good, and now it's my turn. I was 9 years old, so it's like, I better start now. And the first thing, that's the first thing I learned. And that is the kind of thing that people, that's normal in Argentina. Everyone was playing yesterday. I was learning bossa nova. So when Antonio Carlos Jobim died, that was like John Lennon died for me. And Jobim and folklore music from Argentina, all that kind of thing, that's normal. But I learned to play the guitar because I wanted to play bossa nova and folklore music. But then I heard Jimi Hendrix and Jeff Beck when I was 12, 13, so I thought, I want to do this now. And my life went downhill. And so really, my normal life ended when I was 14 and I was a musician. I was going to be a musician.
And did you sing? Did you ever sing?
Yeah, badly. And I still sing. I sing backing vocals sometimes. With Sting, I sing.
You never sing on like a soloist?
No, never, no. No, I don't. I used to go to concerts when I was, as soon as I could, I went to concerts. I moved to America and then I moved to England. I used to go, whoever was on playing in my town. And I never used to look at the singer, I always looked at the guitarist. Well, I want to be that guy. He's pissed off and went this. All night. You never see his face. And I thought that's who I want to be. I didn't realize that the guy with the microphone was making more money. Well, maybe I should have looked at the other guy. So, no, I mean, that's my job, you know, I'm a guitarist, I'm not a singer, never will be. I like singing with Sting, because Sting, when he sings, he has no vibrato, so it's very easy to pitch, and I usually sing below him, a fourth or a third below. I have 5 notes that I can sing really well, because my range is from there to there. So if I feel that works within that range, I'll do it, and he lets me sing when I want.
C'è qualcuno che ha bisogno di traduzione su queste cose qua, le ultime, tutto a posto? Ok, fantastico ragazzi, mi sto un sacco di tempo. Ok, fate domande, se no... Cioè io ne posso fare anche 10, però non posso fare.
I'm not a guitarist, but I feel that the necessity to experiment the music I have in my mind. And many times when I start to create my own music, happened that I write something that already exists, like same stuff, other stuff. But after a few times I played, I saw that it's another stuff. It's the same songs, but it's different. The chords are the same. Yeah.
Well, that happens a lot.
And I'd like to know how you start to create your music, like Chicago House, or the other songs. How you start when you have to write music. You know you have to. There's no inspiration. You have to start because you have to do something for records or something like that. How you project your songs?
Well, really, it's just like I said before. It's just experimenting. It's using music as a language. It's just using it as literature. People experiment with words. Writers do that a lot. They get up early in the morning, they write different ways of communicating. Because chords are like adjectives that describe something. You have I like creating problems for myself. Let's say I've got mathematical problems. Give my heart's a good example. So if I got... So where do you go from there? You know, do I need to go down or I can go... That's another option. Then I'm changing key. So really, it's just creating problems for yourself. But the best thing is usually the simplest. This has taken me a long time. And just to change subjects a little bit, when I do sessions as a guitarist for other people, my first big experience was, because you have to compose when you're a session player. People don't understand that. You're not just playing guitar, you're composing on the structure. But I remember my big opportunity was with Phil Collins, a song called Another Day in Paradise, which was, I remember thinking, all I heard was just a drum, you know, just that, and there were chords. And I thought, I've got to play something simple. This is the only thing that's... I made a career out of that. Anyone can make that. And it's the same with, so that's you have to compose something simple. So when you're talking about how do you start simple. Don't try and do something incredible. And if somebody else has written it, you don't know that. But with a top line, I mean, Sting will admit that every breath you take is Stand By Me. It's the same chord. Same thing. Exactly the same. Going to the F sharp minor. One little change, different lyrics, different melody. But it's so he will say to you, yeah, Stand By Me. And I will say to you, Shape My Heart is Chopin. So it's no, you don't have to worry about being original. And it's the same with, you should never worry about that. People who worry about that write complicated music, and no one wants to hear that. The people who write complicated music like Prokofiev and Stravinsky and Radiohead, really interesting musicians, they started by doing simple. I promise you, I'm sure about that. And it's the same with, I did a song with Ronan Keating, Notting Hill. I played on that song, it's probably my most famous guitar. That's my job. So, all this other crazy stuff, I do that because I like it. Bach and Laudo, Sebastian Bajos, all this crazy shit. That's what I like, but really, that's how I make a living, it's plain simple. And how, when I work with other songwriters, lyricists and singers, you have to be simple. Don't worry about that. Hi.
Ciao.
Ciao.
When you compose something, when you think you have finished something, now it's finished. You take out notes or you add notes?
Very good question. Really good, that's a deep
it's my
question.
problem.
No. I think it's take away. You know that game Jenga? With the, it's like you have to take everything away, the blocks, and leave it standing. And how to stand. And I think that's a really good point. It's very difficult to produce records. That's a mistake a lot of people make, and I still make that mistake. But I think it's the same problem that painters have. How do you know when the painting when you sign it? It's the same with a record. How do you know when you press it? Is when you master it. There's no way of knowing, but it's very difficult to avoid the temptation to put more instruments on. I was lucky once to meet Bruce Springsteen, who told me, we were talking about the same subject, and he said anything that doesn't need to be on the record shouldn't be there. And I think, yes. That's true, yeah, so what? But actually, I went home, I've been thinking about that for years now. It's so right. It's so true. And it's the same with harmony. I'm not talking instruments. Harmony. Do you need to put them? I mean, that's a nice chord. But what about? That's the same chord. Or interesting chords like that. What can you take away to have the same feeling? That's the same feeling. It's just adding color. It's adding more information just to stress what we want to say. So, I wrote a piece from my first record called Eclipse. I like to do with these pieces is use the law of structure. It's like architecture. You know, architecture and music are very common. Because to be a good architect, you know, these incredible buildings in Rome and in Spain and everywhere, you have incredible architecture. A good architect knows about engineering. If you want to design a building like that and the windows are there and there's nothing there, you have to know engineering. How is it going to stand out? You can't just draw. Okay, you're in the first year in college of architecture and you go to your teacher and say, I've got a building and it goes like this to your room. And your teacher's going to go, really? What would happen if we built that? It would fall down. So it's the same with music. You have to understand structure. And for structure, there's certain rules with form. Like you have a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, a middle eight, outro chorus. That's a normal songwriting structure. Or intro. And that is all coda and everything. Yeah, sure. But a beautiful, like classical pieces, even though they have a lot of different complexity, usually they have the same structure. Because it works. So I think it's important. I don't know the Italian composition here, but it is important to use those tools of structure and work with the limitation. So if somebody says to you, okay, as an exercise, I want you only to play it's with major and minor chords. No sevenths, no major sevenths, no dominants, sixths, nothing. All you got is or. It's a big restriction. So what would you write? It's quite difficult. It's a difficult exercise. What if someone were to say to you, you can only use major chords? Then you become a good composer. And it's the same problem, you know. I love problems in music, and you have to treat it like it's an exercise. But inspiration is a good one too. Sometimes you get a gift. If you have a gift, usually it's just a combination of two chords. That means nothing on its own. It's a fifth chord. If you have, that's something. This on its own is nothing. That's nothing. But against this, it's something. So I feel obligated. That's an inspiration. That's a gift from God. You know, it just fell, you know, like a leaf. So now, okay, opening something, then that's inspiration. And then you have to open the windows of inspiration and use knowledge and use power of everything that you've learned to develop stuff. Then what happens usually in composition is the music writes itself, and you're just writing it. I'm not saying that it comes from God. I'm just saying it comes from just opening your mind and your heart to knowledge. You know, knowledge and just emotion and experience.
Yes, sometimes the difficult part is not to have an idea, it's how to use a good idea. You know?
Exactly, well that's exactly what it's about. It's even more difficult than that is how to recognize a good idea.
Yeah.
And this is, I have to give Sting 100% credit, because when I was doing this, I didn't recognize that. He did. I was just sitting by the fire going, for me, that was nothing. It was nothing. Because I have 100 things that are like that. But he said, what is that? And I went, it's just 6 chords that I'm working with. It's not a song. And he said, well, no, I want that to be a song. So I didn't see it. So you need to see, when you have an idea, how do you know you have an idea? There's a feeling, it's just a feeling. And usually it's just like a tiny relationship between 2 chords. Because if you see everything in one color, like a chord, beautiful chord, but it means nothing. You can't do that all night. It means nothing. Now I need something because I've got a different chord next to it. I like the idea of having a common tone, you know, like I've got this one tune where my experiment was just to have a G sharp everywhere. So it's just like, this note always works. Can you play a G sharp on the piano? So that was an experiment in composition. Give me an A, please.
Yeah.
Just play a G sharp. Keep playing. There's so much you can do with G sharp. So I thought, okay, today I'm doing that. And it makes sense. I could have a singer sing some lyrics just with one note, and it would be interesting. And that's why the tune One Note Samba by Dominic Miller. So, and also it's like how it's sensitive. I love common tone. It's just another exercise in composition. And sometimes the other way around, where you have a melody that just stays. You know, that's all composition is. It's just Bach was always doing that. He was turning things upside down, sideways, backwards, mirror version. It's music is fun.
Yeah,
you know.
I have a question on this.
Yeah.
How many good songs you waste if you waste it? I don't know if
how many good songs do you waste?
Yeah, it's like if you write something that you like, but sometimes you hear the music. It happens to you.
About 90% of the time.
So you write a lot of music, but you use a little part of all.
Oh yeah. I write a lot of music, and I use just some of it, and maybe what I'm using is not the best.
Yeah. I was thinking about it when you are talking about this.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, I can't say to you, I can't say to you, this is my best piece. No, it's the piece that means something to me, but to you, it's like quantum physics. You know, it's like for you it means something else. For me it means this. You know, it's the same thing. How do you know what people will like? What you have to do is you have to like it first. Because if you make music just to be successful, it's not going to work. It might work. You might have a hit, but then you have to write another one. But you can't work like that. All the biggest hits in the world, I bet you anything, I know from talking to musicians, were written in 2 minutes. They didn't go into a room to go, well, today we're going to write a hit. It doesn't happen like that. It never happens like that. The biggest hits in the world, are songs that mean something. And the reason they're number one is because they have a certain... I'm not talking about, Pop Idol, X Factor, or American Idol bullshit like that. That's, we know that that's stupid. That's just entertainment. It's got nothing to do with music. I'm talking about hits. There are hits for a reason. Even Stripes. A song that you think, that's shit, Lady Gaga or whatever. Okay. Maybe. Why don't you just put it on, spend 1 hour trying to figure out why it's successful. And you will see why it's successful, because the chorus goes like this, the melody is cool, she's a good musician, she's a great musician, she's played, she knows what she's doing. It's not just Lady Gaga, you see the video of bullshit. No, it's not. It's not an accident.
Another one.
Yeah.
Do you use old songs? Do you have you ever used something that you write years before?
Sometimes, yeah. I do sometimes, yeah, but I don't really like doing that because it reminds me of this place I was in. But I try not to do. I think it's. I'll tell you one composer who does that a lot is Gilberto Gismonti. Do you know him?
Yeah.
He's a great composer from Brazil. He sometimes even records his songs again, his tune, because he's in a different place, so he has a different perspective. But no, I try not to do that because I'm more clever or mature now. Maybe I could do it, but I don't. I like the purity of how it was there and just leave it, move on. I don't like looking back.
Dominic, hi Dominic.
Hi.
I'd like to ask you, in your musical career, which were the most difficult things you've experienced and how did you solve them?
It's a really good question. Well, I'll tell you, the most difficult one was my first big opportunity with Phil Collins. Because I was 29 years old and I got given this huge opportunity. I remember going to the studio, he was late and I felt very nervous. I thought, I was nobody. And I thought, how do I get my message across? And then I asked myself, my difficult situation was that I didn't have a message. I've got nothing. I just wanted the job because I asked for it. And he gave it to me. And that was like, it's almost like going on a blind date and sending the picture of somebody else, and then you have to meet the person. That's how I felt. But that was the most difficult situation I've had in the studio, but the most rewarding. And the only way that I conquered, is that a word? Yeah. You understand? That difficult situation was by realizing that I cannot bullshit. I have to just play simple, and that's why I play. I have to just do what's good for the music, not what's good for me. So that's when I kind of let go of the old me. It was just like one day to the next I changed. And that was the most difficult situation I've had in the studio, but the most rewarding. I've had a lot of other difficult situations in airports, and with customs, and in different countries, losing luggage and losing my passport. But that's, or talking to the wrong people. But there's a lot of stories there which have got nothing to do with this.
I'd like to know, do you think that it's important to find a good teacher, or what do you think is more important to find a teacher, or just to learn your things while you're
I think it's important to have both. I think it's important not to put too much responsibility on the teacher, because sometimes teachers don't really like being teachers. I don't want to be a teacher, I want to be a musician. So I think when you have a teacher, it's like having a doctor. You have to help them, help you. So you have to help the teacher to help you. It's the same with a doctor or a dentist. If you're like this, it's not going to work. So you have to allow the teacher to make you a good subject. And I think it's important to have a good teacher, but what's really important is to learn how to teach yourself. And that's what I'm teaching you today, is how to, it's almost like Tai Chi, the method of, you know, when you see people in the park going like this, you think, oh, bullshit. It's not bullshit, because it's very difficult what they do. It requires a lot of energy. So I say to you, get your instrument, if it's your voice, if it's drums, piano, guitar, and just play. Just do that, and learn a piece. Learn a very simple piece, nothing too clever, and just learn how to play music with sound production. The sound. A lot of people don't think about the sound. Your teacher, his or her job is to allow you to get a good sound. I don't think it's a teacher's job to tell you how to interpret music. This is where I disagree. I had a teacher when I was at music college. I went to the Guildhall School of Music in London, who had an opinion about how to Bach, and I didn't agree with him. But what I wanted from him was the good hand position, you know, good right hand technique, and I got a lot of technique, but I got nothing from music. But that's good. He's like a trainer, a tennis coach. You know, Roger Federer or Nadal's tennis coach is not going to beat Nadal in the game of tennis, but he might have some good words. So you need a teacher who can help you become stronger. Because usually, a good teacher is not someone who's a great performer. I think it's a different thing. A teacher is a mentor, someone who is a tennis coach.
So he got to discover what the good things that are inside.
Sorry, I don't understand.
It means that the teacher just has to discover what you have inside.
Yeah, the teacher needs to discover, first of all, if you want to do it. If you're just there because, you know, I've got a teacher, it's 6 o'clock and we finish at 7, then, you know, the teacher's going to, if you go in with that attitude, then the teacher's going to go, yeah, kind of like this, and then, so, no, it's a teacher, I think, you're right, is to find what your strength is. But more importantly, where is your weakness? You know, that's more important, because your strength is okay, that's fine, we have that. If you're a great interpreter, if you have good feeling, good sound, well then that's great. So he's going to work on good technique. One of my greatest teachers was actually Vinnie Colaiuta, because he didn't know, but he was teaching me in conversations we had over dinner, teaching me about his philosophy with music. So, but I have had real teachers who haven't really helped me, but some of them have. I've been unlucky and lucky.
I was thinking about things you said about our there are some weird things.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about how you think your personal relationship with the instrument. I mean, is that a release person, for example, when you're down, or something you can pick up and play very hard? Do you still love and hate or not?
Yes, it is difficult sometimes. I'm not obsessed with the guitar. The guitar is just my instrument. It's just a piece of wood with strings on it. And it's not important to me. But to take away stress, I don't play guitar. I like to read or do other things and get away from it. But that's a really good question. I've never thought about that before. Sometimes I do practice. When I'm pissed off or angry about something, I use the guitar just to practice. So I think this is a good opportunity to practice. Because I don't care about it, so I'll just go. Or play Bach. You know. And you can do it slowly, you know, like I said, I will do it slowly. While I'm talking to you, or to my wife. So really, you know, I mean, that makes me think about another thing with sound. A lot of people come up to me after a concert and they say, wow, what is that guitar? And I think, well, say, Miyazawa Kazafumi Yami electroacoustic guitar. Thank you. Bye. You know, that's such a great sounding guitar. I want to get one, and then they write it down. That's great, you know. Okay, there it is. Anything else you want to say? No? Okay, no, I just wanted to know, what is your guitar? So then they buy the guitar sometimes, or the pedals that I have when I play electric, and then I get an email saying, no, this is something wrong, it doesn't sound the same. So, you know, we use a tennis player. If Roger Federer wins Wimbledon tennis, and I have 1 minute, I'm not going to say to him, wow, what kind of racket? You know? And he says, the Wilson high tension. Thank you. So this is something that I have all the time. Jeff Beck, if you give Jeff Beck any piece of shit guitar, he will make it sound amazing. He will, I promise you. So it's not the instrument. The instrument means nothing. It's good to keep it in very good condition, and I do, I clean it, you know, make sure the strings are good. But I don't have a strong relationship with my guitar. I have a 1961 Fender Stratocaster, which is worth thousands of dollars. And some of the roadies and people say, how can you take that on tour? This is a valuable guitar, why don't you use it? Because I don't care about that. It's not important to me. I have a 1971 custom Les Paul. It's just a guitar. I have this, which is beautiful. I have a Rodriguez classical guitar, which is worth, I don't know, $20,000. Do I care? No. It's just an instrument. I don't think you should take your instrument too seriously, because that's what it is. But if you have a Stradivarius and you're in a taxi and you go to a restaurant, you should be careful with it. Or else you're going to get into trouble.
Do you improvise?
Yeah, I do improvise.
Do you like it?